We'll call to order the special meeting of the Board of Finance and the public hearing. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. All rise, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Yeah, and she's going to take notes. So, we have two sets of minutes to approve from April 18th and May 2nd special meeting. I didn't see anything substantive.
I move that we accept. I'll second.
Seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Good job.
Let me just give a little preamble. Obviously, unless you don't have a television set, you know that things are changing rapidly in terms of information from both the governor and the Democrats and Republicans relative to attempts to come up with a budget for the state of Connecticut. Of course, that has potentially great impact on us as a town and our need to create a budget, approve a budget, and then set tax rates appropriate to cover the expenses that we have. And there are big components of both revenue that comes to us from the state and expenses this time around that the state has decided, at least from the governor's office, that they'd like to push back down to the towns for us to spend and cover. So just bringing everybody up to date, we had discussions with both boards, including direction at our May 2nd meeting to both the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen to go back to their respective boards and see what they could do in terms of finding $1 million worth of reductions, with the hope that we would be able to come back with those budgets approved at the respective Board of Selectmen, Board of Ed, so that we could then listen to one more feedback from the public with the goal of deciding to put those budgets up to referendum. Given the dialogue the last couple of days, I think this board has some things to talk about, but first we would like to hear from the public. So we would open the public hearing. The same rules will apply that we used before. We'd like you to stay within 3 minutes. We won't use a sign up. There's enough. I think we just have people come up one at a time and begin. All right? Joan, you can go first.
I'll set the pace.
I'll
set the pace. Joan Cole. Joan Cole, 26 Wickham Drive. Simsbury can no longer ignore the critical financial indicators of the state. Simsbury is dependent on millions of dollars from the state that may not be forthcoming. We can no longer put our head in the sand and use bonding and general fund to solve long-term institutional financial crisis. The state of Connecticut is facing a perfect storm. There is a serious financial crisis in the state of Connecticut, while the city of Hartford might file for bankruptcy. All these financial crises will have a trickle-down effect on Simsbury's financial outlook. Simsbury has always overtaxed the residents and has increased the general fund. However, with an uncertain financial outlook, we can no longer deplete the rainy day fund for operating expenses and capital expenditures. The Board of Finance has increased the money in the capital non-recurring fund for repayment of expenditures, increasing the operating expenditures for a 5-year repayment. Many of the capital expenditures are below the action level for a referendum, leaving control to the Board of Finance vote with payment by the taxpayers. The Board of Finance should continually evaluate whether these projects are for safety or maintenance and approve projects for need, not for political expediency. You are the gatekeepers, not the tooth fairy. The capital expenditures for $5.8 million budget for the senior center has no consensus from the seniors that will increase taxes for at least 10 years should be eliminated. The Board of Education has a $22.825 million expenditure for a renovation to the middle school, with the Prouder report showing 1,000 reduction of students over the years. This project should be eliminated. Using a slush fund from the non-lapsing account by the Board of Education should be eliminated, and excess money should be returned to the general fund from the capital expenditures. It is the taxpayers who should have the decision on the allocation of this money, not the Board of Education. With a $1 billion deficit facing the state, Simsbury will be asked to be part of the solution to their budget crisis, with millions of dollars no longer allocated to the town. There is a bleak forecast for the future of the state, with businesses and residents leaving the state. We can only surmise that this deficit will be a multi-year loss. The performing arts contract should be renegotiated for the town to collect more revenue for the use of the taxpayers' land. With all the private schools and their assets in Simsbury exempt from paying taxes, using the town resources for free should be changed through a regional effort to change the rules. A tax-exempt entity should be required to accept their responsibility and pay to play. The Board of Finance must take a draconian step to take care of Simsbury's financial future by providing basic needs to the taxpayers and the students. Since much of the budgets are determined by employees, it is time that they share the pain by reducing salaries to absorb some of the losses from the state. All of us must share the pain, and the Board of Finance must demand both boards reduce all budgets to absorb millions of dollars in lost revenues. You can no longer enable a tax and spend mentality. Do your job. Thank you for listening, and all my comments will be posted on Simsbury Patch, Twitter at Joan Co., Newsfeed on Facebook, and Simsbury Forum Topics. Same thing, but you can get it anywhere. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next.
I believe I'm speaking for both Peter Sotilli over there, because he said I could have his 3 minutes, and myself. Hi, I'm Maria Ecke, and I've lived in Simsbury for 35 years. We all know how special our town is, with its beautiful mountains, rivers, waterfalls, and wildlife. It is truly a star amongst all the other towns in Connecticut. On this we all agree. Now, I would like to discuss some issues about our town that we, the citizens, will likely agree upon. Here's where the problem lies. When the people in power are also the same people who make the decision to give themselves a raise, there becomes a colossal conflict of interest. We, the citizens, who sit idly by as our leaders position themselves into their power seats, must never forget that it is we, the citizens, that are the only structure in place we have to monitor and keep the mighty power of their pens in control. The only way we have to do this is to remember who passed which budget and who they were, and remember their names, so when it's time to go to the voting booths, we, the citizens, can finally yield our rightly deserved power. I'm here to represent all the citizens of this beautiful town that was founded by the citizens in the year 1670 and named Simsbury. Although we citizens greatly outnumber the handful of mighty pens running our town, it is a mere fraction of the actual power they possess in their pens. This is why we, the citizens, must all group together and become one loud voice of concern. I'm standing here for all the citizens, and although I'm talking in a tempered voice, the message in our hearts is truly a scream for help. Together we say, don't raise the budget. I tell you, don't raise the budget. Again, we tell you, don't raise the budget. For we don't need our politicians with their mighty pens telling us Simsbury citizens to buckle down one more time. Work harder, for there's more money we want, which means more taxes coming your way so you can raise our pay. According to the statistics, 3 out of 10 people living in Simsbury are struggling just to keep up with their bills. Most of us are finding that the town budget is strangling us in our ability to enjoy our citizenship. Why must Simsbury be number 1 as the highest taxed town in the Farmington Valley when we're not in the areas that we should be, as in our school system and its academic proficiency? Shouldn't we also be more concerned that our citizens aren't being unfairly overburdened? I don't have the time to list all of the actual facts and numbers or calculations that would clearly show there is a need to stop this outrageous, overbearing money grab that our town leaders seem to be grabbing year by year. Hear me, fellow citizens. Say it loudly and say it clearly. Don't raise the budget. Again, we say, don't raise the budget. As the song sung by the Beatles quotes and warns us, if you drive a car, they'll tax the street. If you try to sit, they will tax your seat. If you get too cold, they will tax the heat. If you take a walk, they'll tax your feet, for they are the taxmen. And the last line of the song is also very important. Don't ask them what they want it for. They might just tax you, ask you to pay some more, for they're the taxmen. The pen may be mightier than the sword, but it's not mightier than the voting booths. And I hope everybody reads this, because it's important, as is our town budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Callishman.
Thank you for allowing me to address the Board of Finance. Robert Callishman. I think it's Genesis, where the righteous are guaranteed a spot where all righteous people go. But it also continues to say, if you're a righteous person, you're entitled to live righteously in the present. And the people in Simsbury aren't living in the present, the righteous present. You people tax, tax, and tax. And it's the crony system. It's your cronies that come to you and you say, oh, he's a crony and we have to get along because he belongs to the town committee. Now, it could be a Republican town committee, it could be a Democratic town committee. This is where it comes from, i.e. Dave Ryan. Here's an instance, right, where you're not frivolous, the Board of Selectmen. You go out and you buy a $15,000 golf cart that you could have gone to Jerry Toner, the head of Parks and Rec, and received the cart for free to run for the season that the performing arts run. But no, you sat down and you said, we got to give them the $15,000. And when I inquired about it, I was told, oh, it's in the budget. Don't worry about it, it's in the budget. Because it's in the budget, you had to spend it. And this goes on. So what did you do? You went out and you spent $15,000. Then you have the moxie or the nerve to go down and say, oh, we have to do something about Eno. When you don't even have a program in Eno that's worth its salt. But you spent $15,000 for the performing arts. And then, what did they do? You gave them another $2,500 because you took $2,500 out of the Hartford Symphony, $10,000 that we give the town. And that's another thing. We get people that give money to the town, like Westminster School. They gave us a big chunk of money. What happened to it, Madam First Selectwoman? You spent it. And it wasn't even in the tax. It wasn't even in the budget. They gave it to you. But you spent it. And this board has to more or less show their steel and stop playing politics and stop worrying about what's going to go on at the town committee and grab hold and say this is the way it's going to happen. And Mr. Chairman, right, I say to you, you brought marijuana. You approved marijuana for Simsbury. You approved the ordinance that brought it as chairman of the zoning board. You brought it, along with Dave Ryan, right? And what do we have? We're in such dire need that now we have the head of the state, Governor Malloy. What is he doing? Oh, we're going to bring in marijuana for our youngsters, right? Marijuana for our youngsters. So when the principal from the high school says it's bad to smoke, children will go, what do you mean it's bad to smoke? The governor just passed a law. And that's what he wants. And what are we doing it for? For tax money. And what I'm trying to say, I can go on, is that you're not frivolous. You don't make the hard decisions. You're more worried about where you're going to run next year than about making a good decision. And I'm going to say, i.e., I see you here, and it's the same faces time and time again. It may be the same face from a different chair, but it's the same faces. The same faces. And I think it's time that, and I want to leave you with one other thought that in my mind is idiotic. And I'll use the word idiotic, and I mean it. Now we're going to spend $30 million proposed for Eno. We're going to spend $22 million for Henry James, and God knows how many other frivolous things. And you know what was presented to you by the Board of Selectmen, by our first select woman, was presented, one of the cuts that she made after you asked her to make a cut. What did they cut? They cut $37,000 out of the public safety budget. The people that are hired to protect us, those are the people we want to hurt. And if you go back and you think about it, and if you say you know the town, why is it we haven't hired a policeman in how many years? We have all these new additions, the new apartment houses and everything, and my time is up. But the point I'm trying to make is we're neglecting the things that need attention, and the things that don't need attention, you're spending. And it's like the Roman mob. You're playing to the mob.
Thank you.
The town committee mob. Thank you for letting me go over.
Mr. Hampton.
Good evening. I'm John Hampton, 9 Knoll Lane, Weatog. I'm Simsbury's state representative, and I'm delighted to be here this evening, and thank you for this opportunity to present to you some thoughts from the state capitol. Obviously, it's been a chaotic time at the state capitol with many budgets coming at us, starting with the budget, the governor's latest iteration, which was most devastating. Today, both the Democratic caucus and Republican caucus unveiled their budgets, trying to share as much information with all of you as possible as it comes to me. But I just want to reassure you that I have your back. I'm very grateful for all of your work in a bipartisan manner to do your jobs, and the Board of Selectmen, our first selectmen, Board of Selectmen members here on both sides of the aisle, and Board of Ed members, and Superintendent, Board of Ed Chair, and I see our police represented, and our seniors, and our library, and my litmus test for a budget is really maintaining our core services, all that makes Simsbury great, which is our educational system, protecting our seniors and our environment and our public safety. We cannot continue to add tax burdens to our constituents, to our businesses. We can't continue to bond as we do and borrow as we do. We can't transfer burdens to the municipalities that have been talked about and discussed. as a former municipal elected official myself, I understand and appreciate the hard work that you do, that you need predictability with your budgeting. Our towns that you've budgeted so responsibly, and Simsbury is well known for its responsible budgeting and advocacy and taking care of its schools and its most vulnerable. And I just want to make sure that you know that I'm a voice for you at the state capitol, making sure that Simsbury's concerns are represented, that when we do get to discussions of ECS funding, that Simsbury schools are taken care of, that all of our schools and all of our children are lifted up, because that is the future of our state in terms of jobs, in terms of a vibrant economy. So, we can't have a budget with short-term fixes. We can't have a budget that relies on marijuana and casinos and feel-good short-term stopgap solutions. What we need is what you're looking for, is strategic long-term solutions to state government and making sure it's run effectively and efficiently and serves our constituents well. So please keep in touch with me. Count on me for information, support, resources. I'm glad to come back and share information as it's given to me. If you have any questions, and I welcome the public's input. I hear a lot from the public, most recently about bears. Simsbury is more concerned this week about their bear population, and I am pro-bear. I just want to let you know that. But I'm always happy to hear from my constituents on any issue. But obviously the most important issue in front of us is fixing our state budget and supporting the community we love. So thanks so much for your time.
John, can you just share with us
Sure.
anything in terms of timeline or what we might expect next? Or,
Well, I'm hoping, and we're pushing for CNADA, which is June 7th, that we not go into overtime, that we can make sure that you get your job done in time. Hopefully, negotiations will happen in the next few days now that both sides have produced their budgets. We're promoting that Democrats and Republicans sit down with the governor to come up with a compromised budget, and that we don't have any more delays that's going to really throw a monkey wrench in your works.
Great.
But in the Republican budget and the Democrat budget, you dig deep. There's good in both. There's bad in both. It's really, we have to come together and come up with a product that's not harmful and preserves our core services without increasing the burden to our towns.
John, do you know if both of them include any portion of the teacher's pension cost being put down to the municipal level?
I believe the Democratic one and I think the Republican one do not include that
Okay.
that portion, which is good.
Thank
Which
you.
is very good.
And I'm asking questions there are no answers to, but do you think Governor Malloy will sign a budget that the Republicans and the Democrats can agree on a structure?
That's our hope. Who knows? He's you might know more than I do.
No.
It's hard to really
No insight.
to see what how we'll end up on the.
Great. Any other questions for Senator Hampton? Thank you
Senator,
very much for
you
coming.
promoted. I don't know about promoting, but please keep in touch, and anything you need, be reassured of my support, and I appreciate you letting me be here tonight with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Mark Orenstein, and my wife and I have lived at 82 Old Middle Plain Road for the past 45 years. I'm on the Aging and Disability Commission, Town's Technology Task Force, and since the last election, I've been a library trustee. I'm also on the SCTV board and a volunteer there. I believe that the only time I have talked at a public hearing was at the Board of Selectmen hearing on the Senior Center in February 2015, when I spoke about a parking platform with just a single entrance exit being unsafe, especially for seniors. Over the last 6 years, I've spent a good amount of time and energy on a new center or a significantly improved center, which has caused me to wrestle with what I will be addressing next. I think the boards, commissions, and town employees do a great job. I am here tonight because of the chaos surrounding the state budgets and deficits, and their unknown impact on Simsbury. I purposefully use the plural deficits because this is a multi-year issue. I think I read in the CT Mirror that this is probably going to be a decade and a half to straighten out. It's really, really scary to me. My wife and I have been attempting to follow the state budget process without success up to today. Today I read a CT Mirror chart that with the latest Molloy budget, Simsbury would be negative about $8.2 million. We would lose $7.2 million in assistance and owe the state another $1 million. I don't understand it, but that's what it said. At this time, we feel the town needs to be extremely conservative with expenditures over the next few years. It cannot be business as usual. We're going into a new paradigm. The Board of Selectmen's approved budget has capital expenditures netting about $30 million for 2018. Major parts of this are the Henry James Phase 3 and the Eno Senior Community Center improvements. Our suggestion is that these be pended for several years, at least until the impact of the state budget problems on the town are understood. Together, these avoid about $25 million of the $30 million in bonding that is planned for next year. We recognize that the bond repayments for these projects for the next few years may be small, but we expect the state budget chaos to be a multi-year issue. We suggest that other capital projects be reviewed. If these two items do go to referendum, to the best of our memories, for the first time since 1972, we intend to vote no on capital items. I believe that many other citizens of the town have similar feelings. Thank you.
Thank you for all your volunteer efforts.
Anyone else wish to speak?
Good evening. My name is Lauren Miller, and it's just my privilege to serve as a trustee on the library board here in town. And my husband and I have lived in town for more than 30 years. This is the first time I've actually addressed a public meeting, and I felt moved to do so because as a trustee of the library, we just keep getting more and more bad news from the state. We all are. We're not getting the monies that we wanted. But I just wanted to remind you all and try to keep in the front of your thinking that the library is so much more than just a repository of books and fun activities for kids. It is the center of civility in our town, in our community. It's a center of learning. It is a center for the community. I just learned today in one of the proposed budget iterations that a small program, $18,800 worth of money from the state library that usually comes to us, would eliminate our ability to participate in an interlibrary loan program. That diminishes the resources for anyone who cares to take a book out of the library. But that small amount of financial support will make a huge difference in the amount of programming and equipment that the library can keep current and relevant to the citizens. So I'm not going to be very much longer up here. I just wanted to thank you all again for your service, ask you to consider the service that's going on up the street at the library. Know that it is one of the best libraries in the state of the Connecticut and the country, and I would love to see all of us do whatever we can to keep it that way. Thank you.
I want to expand upon that. My name is Nancy Bugby. We've been in Simsbury since 1954. I'm concerned that the current administration seems to have become the champion of anti-science initiatives. I hear ignorance touted as alternative facts, often in a sneering, rude way. Well, bullying tweets should not be allowed to masquerade as the truth, and wrong-headed executive fiat should not go unopposed. This is a good reason to make sure our public libraries stay healthy bastions of knowledge and truth. Our library in Simsbury is a shining example of cutting-edge technology and information, which we share freely with other local libraries. I very much oppose any measure which would jeopardize the flow of information and knowledge, and I urge us all to stand up to ignorance. As such, libraries are the last place there should be sweeping budget cuts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. David Moore, 18 Bob White Way. I have been a resident of the town since November of 2001. Not as long as some of the others who have spoken to you. However, I should also note that I am the Vice Chair of the Economic Development Commission, the Vice Chair of the Democratic Town Committee, and the Chair of the Board of Ethics. I do not speak for those bodies. I am speaking individually. The problem that we face is a bipartisan problem. It was created by both parties. It's going to be solved by both parties. The Board of Selectmen have proven that it is possible to do that. The Board of Education has never acted in a partisan way and has presented to the Board of Finance budgets that are somewhat sustainable, depending on what we do on the state level. One caution that I would raise is that if you don't bond out sooner rather than later, the interest rates are going to go up. We are probably going to be at the lowest interest rate for the next foreseeable 4 or 10 years even. So before we take an axe to the proposed spending for things like things like Henry James Memorial, we need to be very careful about not cutting our nose to spite our face. We need to be sure that what things we hold off on are things that we would be able to regenerate or restart in another 2 or 3 years. These are not going to be easy decisions. I would also recommend that all 3 boards, when confronting the possibility of lower funds from the state, remember that it is the services and the service side of the budget that is the most important, because it is the services that our town relies on. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Holly Zonenberg. I live at 5 Foxden Road, and we've been members of the town since 15 years. It's my first time talking to you all also, so. I too am here on behalf of our library. I'm actually currently the president of the Friends of the Simsbury Public Library. But as a citizen, I actually found when I moved to Simsbury, it was because of the community. And to me, part of what makes the community is the services that we have. And one of that happens to be our library. I grew up going to a library every week. I brought my children up going to the Simsbury Public Library, where they would just stroll the stacks. And I mean, I literally have to drag them out because they have that love of learning. And to me, that is something that's essential in a community. I, as an adult, I've had access to Consumer Reports when I've needed to go buy my car. I've had access to Consumer Reports when I needed to look up information for washer machines and whatnot. So things that I would not have otherwise have had access to. The programming that the library provides has things from global issues all the way down to the local, and it also reflects our own business community too. Things from interview skills and mock interviews that make a difference for people that I know that participated in them to have that edge in getting the job. From my children being able to take SAT and ACT practice tests, like what a great way for them to explore how to proceed. So the library, I think, reflects the health and the economic strength of a town, and there's really no place for the current, being a little bit on the inside. I do know the library actually can't afford any more budget cuts to its own budget without having a severe impact on its services that it provides to our community, and that would really be a mark against us. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Great. Thank you very much for coming and contributing. It's always important. Look for a motion to close the public hearing.
Move that.
Second. Seconded by Mr. Blumenthal. All in favor, say aye. Thank you. Having closed the public hearing, the Board of Finance will now discuss the issues at hand and what we think are the best actions we should take. I don't know where to start. But I would say that I think we need to give serious consideration to the capital budget, large capital budget items that we have on our agenda, given we don't have clarity. We had hoped for clarity. We had hoped for something that was more in focus than what we see today. But I would say that the the movement is not in a favorable direction. That the budget that Governor Malloy put out yesterday was severe, and it was certainly intended to be that, and puts all of the burden on the town. I don't think this is just a tactic. I think there's a solution that's going to come between the legislature and the governor, but it isn't going to be better than what we had hoped for. It's going to be worse. And so, given that, I think we need to be very, I'll use some of the words that we just heard. We need to really be stern and say we're not in a position. So I would say that we should recommend. I would throw out the topic for discussion at a minimum, deferring both of the large capital items that we've talked about for at least a year, and bring them back next year after we see where this ends up. But I agree. The comments made about this being a decade and a half. This is not a 2-year problem. It's a 5-year problem. There are structural, fundamental problems that need to be dealt with, and no easy, quick solutions. We are in a position where we have some reserves, noted, but those we don't want to use them up irresponsibly. We have an excellent bond rating, which has allowed us to borrow at attractive rates. We don't want to do anything that would put that in jeopardy. So I think that prudence would dictate at a minimum that we do that. Comments?
Does it make sense to have Sean run through the spreadsheet?
Well, I think the impact of this has also been noted, which is that these are expenditures that are spread out 15 years bonding for the junior high and 10 years for everything else. The impact isn't $30 million, but it would be naive to say that if we don't spend the $30 million, we would be better off. Or if we delay it, we might have a different view on both those projects later, any other. So yes.
It's the management of that capital through the projects we anticipate in the future as well. I would, with the state's credit rating getting hit by Fitch last week or this week, whenever it was, and then we had Bill Fazioli in a couple weeks ago talking about how, a municipal bond rating may be at risk because of the larger state issues. I think for me anyway is less of a concern on the bonding of a particular project in town. To me, it's more about making sure that what the agencies look at when they look at a town like Simsbury, they see, 12.5%, reserve, and it's been pretty consistent. They like to see that consistently. We consistently bond projects in Simsbury. We consistently have a healthy reserve. What I would like not to do is to, as the state did, deplete our reserves and show the rating agencies that we are stewards of our community and manage our capital well. And so my approach would be to make sure and get some comfort that the budgets that are coming to us are properly managed on the operating side, that don't deplete our reserves, and show diligence on that side of the budget as well.
Fair enough. Yep.
Well, I think the last meeting, the meeting before, I spoke about, Simsbury truly, being a family, a community, but much like a family, and we have to look at what's a necessity, and then, particularly in these tight budget times, then look at what is a luxury, just as a family would do, and determine, just as a family sometimes experiences when somebody loses a job or somebody is ill in the family, and they have to determine that what can we do without in those circumstances. And If we were faced with buildings that were collapsing, ADA violations and the like, I'd be concerned, but we're not, fortunately. And so I think we do need to look at some of these nice-to-haves on the capital side certainly as a starting point, because we're not in a position to afford them. I mean, if a family loses an income and they thought they were going to add on a new family room in a given year, they're probably not going to add on a new family room in a given year. They may have 6 kids and a very small space, but they figure out how to handle it. And so I'd love to hear from the boards of selectmen and boards of education about, from a capital perspective, what impact they believe that would have. But if you think about where the governor started, he was a little over $4 million, and where he is now, we were hoping that it was going to come in around 2, but now we're looking at a delta between 4 and 10.
Yeah.
So, I think we're at a point where we're probably going to see at least a $4 million hit. So we've got to figure out how to absorb that, and unless it's essential that we move forward on some of the building items, I do tend to agree with you.
Yeah, I wanted to start with the capital, and then, because I think we have to get to all of those, and, they're the operating expense in particular. Maura?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the past 9 months, we were sort of preparing for a worst-case scenario, but sort of hoping, above all hope, for a better scenario. And it seems like over the past few days that our worst-case scenario is rapidly becoming our worst-case reality. And an awful lot of good thoughts and comments tonight, but in my mind, as I'm trying to, grapple with all this, there are things that we need to make sure that we take great care when we talk about cutting or dismantling, including our bond rating, because we can't, as Dave said, fix that. We can't decimate it and then turn around and fix that in a couple of years. In my mind, we need to marshal what resources we have, spend them prudently, and really take a look at what are our core government needs and address those items first. So I agree with taking the 2 large capital projects off the table for right now, but I think I would go further as well with other capital projects that I think may not necessarily, may be more of a want at this point rather than a need.
Okay. So that would take some time to ask both boards to look hard at those lists and see. I picked the 2 big ones because they move the needle the most, and just put a different angle on what I think Derek was saying, is that these in terms of the cash flow and the operating or the part that hits our actual expense budget, we're not saving $2 or $3 million this year by cutting even the $30 million out.
Right.
And we borrow about the same amount of money all the time, and we're paying back what we borrowed for projects that we've financed in the past, and we will borrow as that capacity expands. We have a chart that shows how that works. But it would be wrong not to, or to ignore the size of that expenditure and say that it isn't. So I agree with you more. I think we should look at all of the projects, and we're at a point where, as Jeff says, we need to spend money on town services, important maintenance that preserves value. The education is key, but we have to be sure that we're doing it as efficiently and as getting a bang for our buck.
I echo those thoughts.
All right, so let's talk about the operating budgets then, and I again thank both boards and Matt and Lisa in particular for being very available to communicate during all of this, and we came into this project knowing that there was going to be not creep, but we wanted to look at what we thought we could do, what we needed. We looked at what we thought we could afford. We gave guidance going all the way back to November. We went and asked for $1 million, not an inconsequential thing, orders of magnitude larger than what we had asked for last year. But I think we have to look inside and say, have we done enough? Can we do any more? And, the answer is that, right now, if we put let's use Jeff's number, $4 million, as the combination loss of revenue and or push down costs, and I think that's right. We started at 2. We do 4. Where does that put us, Sean? So, and we're trying to do this in a way that we don't get lost in the numbers. It's very hard. There are a lot of moving pieces to all of these budget ins and outs, and it could just make your head hurt. But if we talk about it as sort of in global areas, Sean's job and ours as board members to look at the ins and outs, but the impact would be about what to the taxes?
Would it be easier if I put up the?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Just want to make sure we have all the factors out there. So 15 bills for this.
I think like 30 million saves about $1 million.
Yeah, it's 990. Which is real money. I mean, yeah.
It's not the full.
It's not guessing with our reserves, then it's going to cost us more to borrow for these 2 projects later on. I'd rather keep this in my and what you do, I'm giving you the count. Long-term projects. If you can demonstrate that you're able to hit on a recommendation on the operating budget. I mean, if they're borrowing $6 million for a senior center, and it's only $200,000 for the current year, that's nothing. That's nothing in their budget. All right.
Can I just say one thing also?
Yeah,
In
please.
addition to the numbers that we're looking at, whether or not, some move the needle more than others, I think we also, though, have to frame it in a context that the taxpayers can understand, too, about the message that we're sending.
Right.
And if we're sending a message that we are having to raise your taxes for the first time in a couple of years, are we doing it because we have to, or because there are things in there that we want to get done? And I want to make sure we're sending the message that any tax increase is because we have to.
I agree more, yeah.
Yeah.
So Rob, I don't know if you want to just start, do we want to start with where we were before, with the governor's budget?
Yeah, so,
I can pull up, I have a few iterations kind of ready, so just whichever.
Okay, so what was the first one I told you to do? So let's start with where we were at the last meeting.
So where we were at the last meeting, just again, try to collapse this a little bit. Screen.
There's just really no way to get this all in one shot.
It continues to be a challenge. All right, but where we were, it was an assumed mill rate increase of 3.56%. And the way we got there was, as we discussed at the last meeting, the 200,000 of both cuts and revenue increases developed by the Board of Selectmen's budget, which are these 3 pieces here, and an $800,000 reduction in the Board of Ed budget. Contingency for the teachers.
So without getting down in the weeds, the numbers that represent $1 million cut out of the operating budgets that we had asked for, and the result of that, and the use of the remaining balance of reserve for the Hartford left us with about 12.6% and $1 million contingency for other things from the state. It's only $1 million
on the expenditure side, right?
Well, I put $2 million. I think that's really where we were. Okay. So that was under 5%. Under a 5% increase in the mill rate. Total combined mill rate of just over 40. We had, so those were the goals, something under 5 and under 40. with including the fire district. And we could probably get under 40 by, the reserve is a little high at 12.5%. If we use some other reserves, about another $500,000, I think, put in.
So use the full Hartford assigned
Yeah.
piece, the 5.5, yep.
So now we're at just under 12 and just under 40. I think those were the numbers. That's what we were looking at. So now go to Governor Malloy's Thursday budget.
So just so I understand, we're
Yeah.
saying the full Hartford is coming back this year?
What-
1.5?
No, that's the.
What we're saying is we set aside $1.5 million.
Right.
And by leaving that in an assigned reserve, we're over 12%.
We just pulled it forward.
We just pulled it forward, yeah. Yeah.
I understand from talking with some folks today that apparently the government commented on reserves, and the towns can handle this because they have reserves,
Right.
or certain
Shame on
towns. Shame on us for being conservative, but in any event, I think 10 to 12% is reasonable, though.
It's like robbing the kid's piggy bank,
Right.
That's not a good idea. All right.
Right, so yesterday, this is the governor's budget. Let's try to collapse.
So this is set up more or less the same way, but a little bit more detail. Sean's gone to the hard work of putting in all of the ins and outs of Governor Malloy's budget, which took away some educational cost sharing. Still not clear where they're going to end up on the car tax. This is inside baseball, sausage making, but the reality is that the total combined impact was, as Jeff said, about $10 million that was being pushed down to the town of Simsbury. It's actually over 10 million, almost $11 million.
Yeah, and like Rob is saying, there are pieces that we still don't know, even though the budget was released yesterday. The car tax, as we've talked about before, his budget would eliminate the reimbursement, which we have up there as $1.3 million that the towns were supposed to receive. There was nothing in his budget release or documents or anyone that has been able to answer of all the
So this is
whether it goes away.
I'm trying to avoid that level of detail. I know how much you love talking about that.
It's true.
But the reality is that we don't have that level of clarity. I'm just kidding. I'm teasing you. But that we don't have enough level of clarity to spend that much time on it, other than if you really read all of the things that were in that budget and put them all in there, it's an overwhelming number, $11 million. So I don't want anybody to fall off their chair, but that's a 14% increase in the mill rate. If we did it all, this already includes the $1 million in the reduction to the operating budget that was passed at the two boards that I mentioned earlier, and just under 43.68 combined mill rate. All right, 12.3% in reserves. So increase that to the $1.5 million there. That'll move it just a little bit. Oh, all the way down to 43.41. Great. So the question is, what is let's talk about one other aspect of this, which is process. Is that we need to have a budgets that are approved by the respective boards that we send to the referendum. And when those budgets are voted on and approved by the citizens of the town, then they become the money can be spent. So that's one aspect of what we have to do as a Board of Finance, is we set how much we're going to spend, then we see what happens from the state about what we get or what we owe, and then we look at how much we have in reserves, and then we work backwards to the equation of how much we have to tax. Because we know how much the grand list is, and that's simple arithmetic, not simple, painful. So that's why we started with the operating budgets. So if we are going to move our contingency number, let's see if we can do this by just making that $4 million. And can you do that without doing all the rest of it, Sean? You really can't, can you?
Yeah, it's just a total of 4 million. Well, I could zero out all the other ones and just
Yeah,
change
let's
one
do
to
that.
4. It ultimately doesn't matter if it's on the
Right.
revenue or expense, but I could.
Can you do that?
Just trying to think. We could.
I just want to get an order of magnitude of what that means.
Yeah, let's just try. So just to be clear, you're talking about the total impact of the state budget being 4 million.
Right. Instead of 10.
Just have to deal with car
Or
tax.
2.
Right.
So is that equivalent then? Yes, right?
Change it to 31.
Is that about right? That's equivalent to that? All right.
Right. Depending on the car tax bill.
Car tax
Yeah,
is
the car
31?
tax.
6% seems. It's going to 31?
Yeah.
I thought it was 32.
Yeah.
The current statute.
We're not going
is
to talk about the
31.
car tax.
Right, we're not, right.
Yeah.
We're not gonna talk.
That's right.
Unfortunately, that was the whole topic last year, and it's not a rounding error, but it's important. It's $1 million. There's
Right.
$1 million that if they cap it and they paid us back, we would get $1.3 million. That's real money.
Right.
But in Malloy's budget, as I understand it, he didn't say whether he was going to make us cap it, but he took out the $1.3 million that was
Right,
coming
right.
back to us. So Sean believes that if he's not going to reimburse us for us, then we can tax it at our regular mill rate, and we would get, that would make it more or less revenue neutral,
Okay.
right? Not exactly, but in that ballpark. So that's an unknown, and that's $1 million. That's real money.
Right.
Okay.
But he has 31 in there.
Right. So we've.
So now put in, so that's over 40, 6.79%. Now put in the impact of delaying the projects. This is only on the 17 budget, 18 budget. It all goes in the debt, reduction of the debt service line, line 4.
All right. So. 259 minus 1. $1099333. There you go. For a second, can't see that. There you go. So that's.
So now we're up 5.5 now. So that $1 million, it's roughly $1 million, 900 to 1,000 to $1 million that's impacted from how we look at the budget. So we're at a 5.5% increase in the mill rate, 5.3 on a combined basis, 40.39, 11.8% reserves. All right. So that's still a big number, more than we want. We have to balance our budget. So I guess what I would say is, so back to the process. So the thought is, and I think this was in the paper, you said you saw it, that some towns are adding a contingent line for the expense in the Board of Selectmen's budget, or the town budget in our case. Because the Board of Finance has control over that, as opposed to putting it back into the Board of Ed budget, where once approved, it's appropriated. So my challenge would be to Matt mostly, not to let him Lisa completely off the hook, but to see if we could squeeze another $500,000 out, some other number to get.
How'd you come up with that? 500,000, right?
It's a number out, just a number. I know we're dealing with real people's lives and real programs, and this is not a simple thing. It's a very hard thing.
What would that do to the mill rate
That's what he's doing.
right now?
It's still over 40.
It's still over 40.
Yeah, so and if we took the reserves down to 11 and a half, put another $300,000 in, then you're probably right about
I
that.
don't think you can go much more lower than that.
39.99.
Look at that, it's the magic number.
I'd only
But again, remember, we would hope, it's very possible that on June 13th, is that the day when we have the referendum and we need to set the mill rate, that there won't be a budget. John doesn't want to hear that, but it's possible, very possible. But we have to set the mill rate that day. And we could do it with the contingency here. If it comes out that it's worse than that, then and it's materially worse than that, we have to do supplemental bills for taxes. Very unpopular, very, it's expensive even to send out the second set of bills. But given the lack of clarity, this is the kind of thing we're going to have to do.
Is it safe to say, Rob, that those reserves would also probably go down again next year and probably the following year? And
Well, I mean, this is the issue for us, because, yes,
and then overlay that with eventual, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, the need for capital projects and go out to the market and bond for those projects as our reserves are being depleted, interest rates are going up, and our credit rating is at risk. Potentially. I don't know how else they're gonna look at it.
I'll speak for myself. I'm not uncomfortable 11.5%, if that's sustainable, and that's really the question.
Well, and yeah, and that's where I'm saying there's no other levers to pull when we have a 98 point whatever it is collection rate, given kind of the overarching theme from the state. We're going to keep it there and hope for the best, but I don't see that reserve level increasing much over the next few years.
So again, I'll state the obvious. So the choices are, you tax the people now to keep it at 12.
Yeah.
Or you cut the equivalent amount out of the operating budget.
I'm trying to just
No, I know.
bring capital back into the,
Oh, no,
into the balance,
Yeah.
right? And understanding the long-term costs of trying to borrow at an inopportune time.
I mean, we're at 10 to 12% as our policy, so we'd be at 11.5, so it's still a healthy reserve. I don't think we'll have any negative impact
Right.
from the rating agencies related to that, but it's also, I think, useful. I mean, we're looking to spur economic development, and so the lower the mill rate, although I understand the relative tax burden on people in Simsbury, when you compare what you get, how much home you can get for your dollar compared to other communities, I think it's still a great place to live. It's a great bargain, but you know what? That mill rate, unfortunately, is seen, it's perceived as a barometer by people looking to move into the community, people to invest in the community, and I do think from everything we've heard from Lisa and others, we are going to make up the Hartford revenue, hopefully, I mean, based on the economic development that's occurring sooner. And we're not changing our collection rate assumption. So at 38.5, we're still going to pull in about $1 million.
Over $500,000 above
additional into the reserve a year, right?
We did calculate.
And what's our current debt to operating
It's
cost?
down to 6.7, I think, and of
6.7.
course, when you
What's
add
our
the
target?
budget, if we
7.
grow the budget,
Yeah.
so we put the
Right.
$4 million in, it's that's the number that you divide by.
Right.
So,
Fine,
and so
It's not
we
really.
look at all of those, but that is not the most important metric, given, that's just math. But I think we've been very responsible about the level of debt we have, and the level of reserves.
Agreed.
So walk me through, if the contingency goes up to $6 million.
So if we end up with a $6 million, so we go get that budget approved with the goal of being right at 40, and it comes back 6. Here it comes.
Mike and Lisa talked about playing the lottery, I thought. And I don't know how many tickets you're buying, but
So it goes up to 41, 7% increase. Reserves go down to 11.3. Now, the reserves are also divided by the bigger budget.
Right.
Right? You're dividing the same, the reserves didn't change. The 11.3 million is still the same number, but it's divided by a number that's now $2 million higher. So the percentage goes down a little bit. So again, that's an important statistic, but it's
in our range.
it's in our, yeah. The number didn't change.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess what I would suggest is that that we're not in position tonight as a board to recommend the approved budgets to the to referendum. But we would need to be by when?
They need to be filed, the budget needs to be approved and then filed the following day, no later than Friday of next week. In
So
order to
today is Tuesday. By Friday of next week?
Right. So Friday, May 26th, the charter says I officially file that with the town clerk. So that has to be during office hours, obviously. So if a meeting was held the night before or Wednesday night, the 24th, ideally, give us a little more time to finish filing. But if you took final votes on May 24th, Wednesday, as far as I can tell, the rooms are open according to the calendar. I think the Board of Ed meets on Tuesday night.
We don't.
Or no, you don't have a meeting. Okay. So then either Tuesday the 23rd or Wednesday the 24th appear to be open.
So I'd ask Matt and Lisa, I mean, could we ask you to look at these, both the capital list and reprioritize those?
What are you looking towards in terms of a number? I gave you a copy of the memo we gave you. It had two options when you had asked for 200,000 savings. The Board of Selectmen at that time chose option B. But the other option, as was mentioned by many residents tonight, in which, given the governor's budget and the comments I'm hearing, I think is also prudent, is to delay the senior center by 2 years. The bulk of it, do a little money for some of the fix-ups that need to be done a little bit sooner, 300,000. I think, Jeff, do I have that right? That would give you 200,000 savings, that's a total of 400,000 in savings. Our board has not voted on that, but we can certainly put that to a vote on Monday.
Okay.
Is there anything else you'd want, though?
Well, I would ask you to look hard, given what we know today. And you guys are very good at doing this, so we all know what we know today, which is more than we knew Wednesday, last week.
Is it safe to say that Lisa's basically doubled, right? By pushing out, that basically you're putting back about 400,000
Yes.
into the current operating.
Different ways.
I understand.
Yeah.
So I would say it would probably be prudent to
But
do the same.
if you look at that full list and say, is there something else that we could either delay or not do?
So I have asked Jeff to work with our department heads on reprioritizing. We will have that list available for the Board of Selectmen in terms of capital.
Yeah.
Are you asking us to also look at operating?
If you can, I know how hard you squeezed, and both of you, but I think
We'll have that full discussion then on Monday.
Yeah, I would like you both to. And then,
There's got to be some level of savings if we're pushing out the Henry James of current year operating savings that I don't know what was done. Is it 700?
Yeah.
So yeah, it might be worth, this is the chart I know we're familiar with here, but one thing that's important to remember, this here is fiscal 2018. There's a large, there is a limit to how much we can save in the capital budget, because a lot of this we repay and we don't actually end up bonding these for a year or two from now for approved projects you're approving now. As we talked about before, the black here on this particular line, fiscal 18, that is debt service payments that I have to make next year. So we can't go any lower than that black. We're also issuing $11.8 million of debt next month to pay for previously approved projects. What we're discussing is, one of the options that I have is to have because we're issuing that in June, we have the option to do a first year of interest only still keeping it at a 10-year issuance. And then we have about 500,000 or so of projects that we need to fund with cash. But this number here, about 5.329, the number I plugged into the model, any additional cutting will help you in out years, but for the fiscal 18 operating budget, I can't go lower than that number.
Understood.
And still pay the debt service back.
I think, to my mind anyway, I really would defer to the boards of selectmen and education for where they believe it's most appropriate to. It's not easy, and they've done a tremendous job, tremendous expertise on those boards. So, and I'm not running for office. I'm not a member of any town committee either. But I think I'd rely on both boards to kind of determine where to come in at the end of the day, as long as we can hit those spending limitations.
Yeah.
Just seeking a little clarification, Rob. I understand the capital numbers we talked about.
Yeah.
500,000 up there. Is that a target? Are you leaving that up to us to look at and come back?
Yeah,
I know these are hard, tense moments per se, but they provide clarification to have conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I think to come to that number. To come back.
Between the two of us.
Yeah.
500,000. Same ratio that we looked at.
No, that's hard. You want clarification, and what I want you to do is look inside your board and your budgets and say, for the town, because if you don't cut it, we tax it. It's just that simple.
No, I understand.
Okay, so
I just want to make sure that I understand. So, me personally, let's talk about the Eno project being pushed out. For now, indefinitely, right? Okay, so we don't know. That's 200 in current operating. Lisa's done about another 200, and it was option A and B. Okay, now we're looking at both options. And Matt just said that there's 700 in current operating on the Henry James project.
no, that's not right. No. It's
No, it'd be
It's in the debt service
Board of
operating
Ed cut 800 out of the operating before tonight, and the delaying of the
Henry James is 700.
it's not operating though. It's out of the capital.
That's what I want to
debt
know is
service.
the operating number.
Well, it's debt service. It's an operating expenditure. It's
It's
not
money they don't
in
have
what
to
we
put
traditionally
into
call
the
the.
You're talking about janitorial and lighting and all the rest of
Whatever it
that.
is,
Yeah, that's. I don't know that that's a material number, is it? Because it wouldn't be built. It wasn't going to be built during the fiscal year anyway.
Okay.
But it'll
But
save
neither was Eno.
but it'll be 700,000 that they won't have to put into their budget
The
next year.
Eno is the same thing.
Same thing? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's debt service.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's on that line 4.
We're not billing them next year for the 700,000
Right. Okay.
Right.
for
Right.
the bonding
Yeah.
or the project.
So both have done, both the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen have contributed further to from where we were on May 1st or 2nd, by virtue of allowing these projects to be deferred.
If they're approved by the boards.
And it's in about the same ratio, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm asking is there anything else you could do out of the operating budget, the salaries, the expenses, the programs, that would be meaningful to help offset what is going to be a 6-7% possible increase in taxes? And so, I hesitate to give you a number, all right? Because if we're going to do it that way, then it's $1 million, all right? And that would be, I understand how hard that would be. But make an effort to get something meaningful. I guess that's where I'd say.
Are you proposing that we use reserves, though, to fill holes and gaps in the operating side of the budget?
Well, to me, reserves is a deduct. The use of applying reserves is a deduct from the amount that we have to raise in taxes. It's just that simple.
Right, but then next year, though that number is sort of artificially there because we now have filled it with reserves. And I really want to be careful that we are not getting into a situation where we are.
That's why we're focused on the operating budgets, because we should stay on this point, because to me, what we're proposing here is $2, $4, or $6 million expense item that if it gets pushed to us, and it's a combination of ins and outs, it's going to impact us. If that's permanent, then we need to, the next year, we'll have that same level of expenses. And depending on how our collections are and everything else, we will look at how much then we have to tax. And the problem is going to be is if the grand list doesn't go up by as much as a regular inflation on the expenses, then we will have to tax more. But I don't see that.
So I mean,
it's not a one-time use of reserves, is it?
Well, I kind of think about it as the same way. So they're using the non-lapsing for about 400,000. Now we're going to put in use of our reserves, which is 1.5. You know, we're at 2 million. So next year we start off with a 2 million hole. Is how I look at it.
Yeah.
Whether that's right or wrong, that's how I'm thinking about it.
Our grand
So
list,
I would tend to shoot towards the higher number, which was 6 million, and if it comes in better, because that means that we're gonna have to do less next year.
Right.
And we're in assessment.
More of
year
a
next
smoothing out, actually.
is the grand list expected to grow by, I thought we had projected on the grand list about 1 million?
So I don't have that information with me right now. I will say the governor's proposal out there, I think, changes the economic development horizon.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we can count on some of the assumptions that we made initially before this.
Yeah, we should,
happened.
and there's one other really very, very scary aspect of this. If in fact the pensions are actually pushed back down to the towns, if that actually ends up being even a piece of it, whether it's a 5-year plan or 10, is that the rate of increase in those is frightening. It's like 20 to 30% over a 5-year period because of the aging. It's just so. I guess I hear what you're saying about the $2 million.
I mean, there are baby steps that we can start. I mean, that I assume, hopefully, we'll start taking. When I think on the state level, I don't know what appetite there is on, at least for new employees, moving folks over to defined contribution plans for defined benefit. I think we still have some open plans now, right, with the town employees, where for new employees. I think at Board of Ed side, I think you've moved everybody over that you can. On the town side, we're what, 2 out of 5, or is it now that we've moved over?
In a number of cases, but remember, Jeff, that in the first few years after closure plans, you're going to end up with a significant increase.
Right.
So it's not that we're not moving forward with that, but in terms of
it's not providing immediate budget relief.
That's right.
Correct.
Right. No, it takes a while.
Right.
Are you assuming contributions when you have a defined?
Well, the town makes contributions.
Yes, we make contributions, and over the last 5-6 years, we've had significant increases in employee contributions into the DB plan. So that is structurally in a place that is, if we get to the right interest rate assumption, should be pretty reliable.
Okay. What is the contribution?
For most employees, it's 5%.
Okay.
And it was 2% for most of them 3 or 4 years ago.
That's another. But all new hires are 7%.
And thank you. Yes, exactly. Right.
I guess I would concur with Kevin and would rather go to that higher number because I just think to do otherwise is sort of masking an issue.
All right. Well, that's a decision for us to make when we actually vote on to put them to referendum. How big that number is.
Help me with the timeline again.
Okay. So
we have to meet next.
I think we have to meet Wednesday? Next Tuesday, basically.
Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah.
Does it have to be noticed for a week?
What day do you guys going to form for Board of Ed?
I think so.
We'll have to figure that out. Special meeting. Let them figure it out. So let's set a meeting for Tuesday night. Same time, same place.
I'm not gonna be here either. So-
Do we have a quorum? Is Linda back?
I'll be here.
I'll be here. You're
When are you
you're
back?
out. So we'll try to.
I'm back on Thursday. I'll be back.
can call
on
in.
Wednesday.
Can we do Wednesday or?
Wednesday night if my flights go.
Planning Commission.
Rather do Tuesday.
Yeah, I can call in,
We will get
as
a
long
quorum.
as it's after 6 o'clock.
And maybe we can get Linda to drive to a hotspot and call in.
I could.
That's right, she's in New Mexico, yeah.
All right. We will get a quorum.
Yes.
If you're talking about Tuesday, the 23rd, I'm just pulling up the town calendar. There's
My
a
flight's on time, I'll be back.
planning commission meeting in this room from 7 to 9. But the
They don't do
Board of
anything,
Ed-
do they?
Because we didn't have a quorum for me.
Right, so the Board of Ed conference room would be available,
Okay.
so then I think that would be
All
an
right,
option.
that's the plan.
Special meeting,
5:45, Board of Ed conference
Then
room.
I cannot call in.
Huh?
Then I cannot call in,
Why?
because I don't land until,
What time do you want to do the meeting?
oh, I say, I land at 6 East Coast time.
if you're in time.
All right, we will scrape together a quorum. We'll get Linda to do it. All right.
And
I'm trying
Kevin,
to see if
you're here.
I'm seeing if I
Right,
can
okay.
if
call
worse
in.
comes to worse.
Are you anywhere you could call in, Derek?
That's what I'm trying to find out right now. I can let you know tomorrow.
Okay. All right, we'll make that
It
happen.
is?
Tuesday,
All right? That's the plan.
Oh, okay.
which would be, you're saying 5:45, so it'd be 2:45 West Coast time.
Rules that loud.
Stop at the turn. Call. All right.
Can I call in for the
What?
Can I call in for, set the mill rate for the referendum that night? 'Cause I'm
We don't
on
set the mill rate
vacation.
that night.
No, for the night of the.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll make that happen.
That'd be great, thanks. I'm on vacation.
Okay, so we don't have resolutions at this time, and we talked about future meetings, so I think that's the business for tonight.
Can I have 3 minutes? I was watching on TV before you said the 500,000, and I cared enough to come down here, 3 kids in the schools.
We can't, unfortunately, because we open and close the public hearing, so,
You open it again?
nope.
No.
So it has to be on the agenda, it has to be
It has to be
announced.
noticed, and
But we did hear that.
What would happen to the world if I spoke? Would we all still be okay tomorrow?
I think we duly register that you're passionate about the schools, and we understand that.
Well, I would just want to say one thing real quick then. I pushed these guys really hard on spending, and I agreed with most of the people who spoke at the beginning, even Joan Coe.
Thank you.
But these guys were under assault for 800,000. I was one of the people who had them under assault. You're asking them for another 500 now, late in the game. It's
you're on the record. Thank you. Thank you.
Uncertain times.
About that again.
Thank you.
They're cutting into meat now. That's just
Got it.
fact.
Okay. All right, looking for a motion for adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Thank you.
There was fat there to